In this video, we head into the sun-soaked deserts and rugged mountains of Arizona, a place known for its rich history and tantalizing tales of hidden fortunes. From legendary lost mines to secret caches left behind by outlaws, Arizona has captivated treasure seekers for generations. In this compilation, we've gathered some of the most intriguing treasure stories from the Grand Canyon State, with each tale adapted from classic treasure hunting magazines. These stories offer a glimpse into the mystery and adventure that define Arizona's past. Enjoy. One night in 1903, the weathered gunslinger Zwing Hunt beckoned his nephew Hugh to his bedside in a San Antonio hospital. After dismissing the nurse, he gestured towards a pair of weathered, ornate boots in the corner. "Reach into the toe of the left one, Huey." Hugh extracted a crumpled piece of paper containing a cryptic list detailing over $3 million worth of treasure, dated August 3, 1882, including a box of stolen diamonds, gold bars, silver ingots, Mexican coins, and 2 gold statues looted from a church. "Now listen closely, Huey," Zwing continued. "Billy Grounds and I hid it all near Davis Mountain after disposing of the old Mex who aided us, then incinerating the wagon and horses in Skeleton Canyon." Following Zwing's passing, Hugh made numerous failed attempts to locate the cache. Over time, others also pursued the rumored treasure of the infamous bandit Carlos Robles, all in vain. The wealth remains buried, untouched, for some 87 years in a desolate canyon in eastern Arizona. The saga began when the Arizona outlaw Curly Bill Brocious established himself in a strategic Chiricahua Canyon in 1881, plundering the territory between Tombstone and Bisbee towards Nogales. Curly Bill, a dapper figure with a penchant for dual pistols, preyed on Arizona cattle and Mexican travelers alike. One day, near Naco, he encountered Garcia Morales, a minor bandit with a sack of gold dust stolen from a miner. Sensing an opportunity, Morales disclosed Carlos Robles' plans to smuggle his riches across the border. Intrigued, Curly Bill swiftly dispatched Morales before his gang set off to intercept Robles. The encounter unfolded in bloodshed, leaving Morales silenced and the promise of riches entwined with treachery lingering in the desert air. He turned to one of his men, a cattle rustler named Jim Hughes. Hailing from Bisbee, Hughes was the outlaw offspring of an Arizona copper miner and a Mexican woman. In his 30s, he possessed a swarthy demeanor and a shrewdness that belied his years, fluent in both Spanish and English. "You heard what this bandito said. Could be he was talking straight," Zwing remarked. "Could be," Hughes muttered. "I've heard rumblings that Mexico's becoming too hot for Robles. Suppose you venture into Mexico for a while. Maybe Nogales is a good place to start. I've heard whispers that Robles has allies there. See what you can uncover." Jim Hughes, resourceful and cunning, also bore a striking resemblance to a Mexican. After several days of absence, he returned with valuable intelligence. Robles and his gang, over a dozen strong, were concealed in the Sierra de la Madera in Chihuahua, near the town of Penuelas, just 20 miles from the border. True to Morales' words, Robles was preparing a train of burros to transport his accumulated wealth across the border, evading notice by skirting Nogales to the east and heading northeastward through the desolate San Simon Valley and the surrounding mountains via Skeleton Canyon. Despite his meticulous planning, Robles' ultimate destination remained a mystery. When Hughes returned to Curly Bill's hideout in the Chiricahuas, he found the gang leader absent, off on a trip to Bisbee with no expected return date. Displeased by the diversion, Hughes resolved to take matters into his own hands. With the promise of a fortune at hand, he sought to assemble his own gang. Under the cover of night, Hughes slipped away from the Chiricahua camp and journeyed to Tombstone, where he recruited a motley crew of followers. Among them were Zwing Hunt, a seasoned tough in his late 50s, and Billy Grounds, a brash and eager young gunslinger. Rounding out the group were Nevada Joe Lyons, Will Brennan, Sam Oakridge, Will Newbold, and Phil Harvey, a collection of saddle tramps with a knack for handling firearms and a bounty on some of their heads. On August 1, 1882, the newly formed gang set out from Tombstone towards Skeleton Canyon. Hughes and Zwing chose a strategic position for an ambush, nestled between a steep canyon wall and a dense hillside. Hughes instructed Billy Grounds to take the horses ahead to Silver Spring and secure them, a task which Grounds begrudgingly accepted. Once Grounds departed, Hughes divided the remaining men into 2 groups, each ascending opposite slopes of the canyon to establish concealed campsites. The stage was set for the impending confrontation with Robles and his band of outlaws. With nothing left to do but await the outcome, they held their breath, hoping Hughes's information held true. The pack train appeared around mid-morning on August 3rd, led by Carlos Robles, a clean-shaven man in his 40s sporting a wide-brimmed vaquero hat and crisscrossed bandoliers over his charro jacket. Behind him trailed the heavily laden train of 26 burros, each carrying 2 cowhide sacks brimming with treasure, accompanied by 14 members of Robles's band. They proceeded slowly, the riders flanking the plodding burros, chatting, smoking, and singing without a scout in sight. Robles himself exuded a relaxed, carefree demeanor, having successfully navigated his men and their loot across the border, deftly avoiding Mexican army patrols, with only a minor skirmish with hostile Indians marring their journey. From his hillside lookout, Zwing observed the riders below, while across the canyon, Hughes took aim at Robles's back. The bullet that pierced Robles's heart signaled a devastating crossfire. Caught off guard, 8 of Robles's men fell in the initial barrage, leaving the survivors disoriented and desperate to flee. Bandits, burros, and riderless horses bolted in every direction between the narrow canyon walls, pursued by relentless gunfire from above. As Hughes and his men descended to the canyon floor, they encountered a scene of gruesome chaos, littered with corpses and spilled treasure. After accounting for the dead and searching for survivors, Hughes and his crew rounded up the remaining burros, discovering 3 were missing, having fled westward through Skeleton Canyon towards the open mesas. In the aftermath, speculation in Tombstone and Bisbee swirled about the fate of the missing burros and their cargo, with theories ranging from chance encounters with cowhands to deliberate acts of concealment. As Hughes and his men gathered the hijacked loot, Zwing meticulously tallied their spoils on a scrap of paper, intent on keeping a record. Reluctant to risk suspicion by transporting the treasure back on horseback, they buried it beneath a big live oak east of Silver Spring. The prospect of burying the banditos and disposing of the horse carcasses loomed large, prompting a hasty departure from the canyon the following morning. Returning to Tombstone, Hughes encountered Deputy Sheriff Healy, who questioned his whereabouts during the past few days. With a plausible alibi, Hughes evaded suspicion, although Healy cautioned him to lay low until tensions with Curly Bill Brocious subsided. With the memory of the ambush still fresh, Hughes couldn't help but feel a sense of unease lingering in the air. Evidently, Curly Bill had his suspicions that Hughes had gathered a crew and set off to claim Robles's treasure. He likely knew of Zwing Hunt's involvement, and perhaps even Billy Grounds and some of the saddle tramps. However, he remained unaware that the ambush had already taken place and the loot was safely hidden. After contemplating his next move, Hughes sought out Zwing to discuss their predicament. Hughes recounted his conversation with the deputy sheriff, and Zwing listened intently, nodding in understanding. "It seems Curly Bill has caught wind of our scheme," Zwing remarked, his gaze sharp. "What's our plan now?" Jim Hughes grinned cunningly. He had it all figured out. He intended to return to Curly Bill's hideout in the Chiricahua Canyon and smooth things over. Hughes would explain that he had acted alone in hijacking the pack train because Curly Bill was absent, emphasizing the need for caution and patience. "I'll assure him the stash is secure where it lies, and $3 million is worth waiting for until the coast is clear." Meanwhile, Hughes then unveiled his plan for a second betrayal. While he kept Curly Bill distracted, Zwing and Billy Grounds would retrieve the loot from Skeleton Canyon, relocate it to a safer spot, and cut out Brennan, Sam Oakridge, and the other saddle tramps from the deal. Zwing grasped the plan quickly. "So we're also leaving out the other 5, he surmised. "Any objections?" "None from me. The fewer involved the better," replied Zwing with a sly grin. Thus, while Zwing and Billy set off for Skeleton Canyon, Hughes departed for the Chiricahuas. His return to Curly Bill's hideout surprised the gang leader, who regarded Hughes with suspicion. Yet Hughes managed to allay any doubts, and everything proceeded smoothly. Hughes was content with his cunning plan, eagerly awaiting the opportune moment to slip away and reunite with Zwing and Billy to abscond with the treasure. However, Zwing had different intentions. As he and Billy journeyed toward Skeleton Canyon, Zwing proposed a further betrayal, to cut out Hughes and keep the treasure for themselves. "If we hold out on Hughes," Billy reasoned, "he'll come looking for us. He'll be too busy staying alive with Curly Bill and the others on his tail," Zwing chuckled, "and I know just the place for us to disappear." The notion excited Billy, and as they rode, Zwing painted a vivid picture of their future. They would split the treasure, leave Arizona behind, and embark on new lives. Zwing envisioned a lavish existence in San Francisco for himself, while Billy dreamed of becoming a wealthy cattle baron in New Mexico. Their reverie was interrupted by the approach of an old Mexican farmer, Luis Hernandez, whom they coerced into aiding their scheme. They directed him to Skeleton Canyon, where the grisly aftermath of the ambush awaited them. After relocating the treasure and dispatching Hernandez, they left the scene under cover of night, heading south towards their newfound sanctuary, the Chandler Ranch near Charleston. Unbeknownst to them, their actions had set in motion a chain of events that would soon engulf Tombstone in turmoil. The discovery of the massacre in Skeleton Canyon, coupled with the disappearance of Hernandez, sent shockwaves through the town. Meanwhile, Curly Bill and Hughes remained in the dark, unaware of the treachery brewing within their own ranks. That evening, he once more slipped away from camp, this time on a quest to locate Zwing. His actions upon finding Zwing and Billy Grounds would hinge on the information he gleaned from them. However, fate intervened, and it was Deputy Sheriff Healy who stumbled upon them first. After days of scouring the surrounding area with posse men Jack Young and Joe Madera, they arrived at the Chandler Ranch on the morning of August 22nd. Though Zwing and Billy were present, Jack Chandler and his hand, Charlie Osborne, were away searching for strays. In a tense confrontation, Billy Grounds, in a panic, opened fire. His shots mortally wounded Madera and grazed Healy, while Young sustained a bullet wound to the thigh. In the ensuing chaos, Billy Grounds was fatally shot, and Zwing was gravely injured, taking 2 bullets to his lungs. Upon Jack Chandler and Osborne's return, they hastily tended to the wounded, loading them into a wagon and rushing them to Tombstone. Despite their efforts, Billy Grounds succumbed to his injuries before they reached the hospital. Once there, it was determined that Healy's wound was minor, and Young was expected to recover. Zwing, however, faced a dire prognosis with bullets lodged in his lungs. Despite his critical condition, a guard was posted outside his hospital room. Remarkably, Zwing's condition improved, and he was on the road to recovery when a stranger arrived in Tombstone. This stranger, Hugh Hunt from San Antonio, claimed to be Zwing's nephew, having read about the gunfight in a Texas newspaper and traveled to visit his uncle. The following day, Hugh Hunt made his way to the hospital, where he incapacitated the guard and spirited Zwing away on horseback. Fleeing town, Zwing became a wanted man, hunted by Jim Hughes and Arizona law enforcement. For a while, Zwing's whereabouts remained a mystery until rumors surfaced that he and Hugh had encountered hostile Indians in the Swiss Helm Mountains, resulting in fatal injuries for Zwing. However, the veracity of this tale was uncertain. Meanwhile, Deputy Sheriff Healy and his posse discovered a grave matching the reported location, alongside the bodies of 3 slain hostiles, presumably killed by Zwing and his nephew. Reflecting on the events later, Deputy Sheriff Healy admitted that their mistake lay in not uncovering the grave, suspecting it would have been empty. Despite numerous attempts, Jim Hughes and Curly Bill failed to locate the treasure in Skeleton Canyon. While Curly Bill met his end in a gunfight, Hughes fled with a sack of currency, eventually disappearing in California. In the years following, treasure hunters descended upon Skeleton Canyon, yet the loot remained elusive. Zwing, however, lived on in Mexico, prospecting for gold in the Sierra Madres. Despite finding enough to sustain him, he eventually returned to the U.S. for medical treatment in San Antonio. Sadly, his ailments proved fatal, but before passing, he disclosed the exact location of the cache to his nephew, Hugh Hunt. Despite several attempts, Hunt abandoned the search, as did others who followed in his footsteps. Thus, the treasure of bandit chief Carlos Robles, valued at $3 million, remains undiscovered to this day. Some 60 miles to the northeast of Tucson, Arizona, the sandbed of Arivaca Creek merges with the sandbed of San Pedro River, both as dry as a limeburner's hat. Old Camp Grant, distinct from the new one, was situated at this junction. In the early 70s, the Arivaca band of Apaches had their main camp amid the Arivaca Hills about 10 miles distant. The route between Camp Grant and Tucson was marked by piles of loose stones, bearing witness to the clashes between the Apaches and their white enemies. The cairns for Mexican victims were adorned with crude crosses of stalks from the mezcal and Spanish dagger plants, exuding an unutterably lonely aura. The Arivaca Indians were determined to defend their homeland at all costs. The one white man who unraveled the secrets of the harsh land and gained a fame to rival that of the poet of the Sierras was known simply as Yuma. A West Point graduate and seasoned border service officer, Yuma arrived at Fort Yuma on the Colorado River as the acting quartermaster. His position gave him oversight of vast supplies for the post and other outposts across the region, a responsibility that unfortunately provided ample opportunity for dishonest dealings. Caught in the web of corrupt army contractors, Yuma succumbed to the allure of peculation. Upon discovery of their malpractices, he faced a court-martial and was subsequently discharged from the army. His sense of disgrace, compounded by his genteel upbringing and military pride, was profound. Cast out from his own people, he sought solace among the Yuma Indians, with whom he had formed strong bonds. Pascual, the chief of the Yuma Indians, commanded great influence and power over his people. A figure of grave demeanor, with leathery wrinkled cheeks and a striking ornament hanging from his prodigious nose, Pascual held sway over his tribe, which lived in a state of peace and abundance. The physical prowess of the Yuma people left a lasting impression on all who encountered them. The women were like noble partridges, and one of these old Pascual gave to the exiled lieutenant, who married her and became an adopted member of the tribe. Thenceforth he was known to white men by no other name than Yuma. Yuma became an Indian trader. His adopted people were at peace with the various divisions of the Apache tribes, and among these, with his bride as a protective talisman, he was free to travel and traffic. Taking pack mules loaded with rifle ammunition and other goods desired by the Apaches, Yuma and his wife penetrated where no white trader before him had dared intrude. He seems to have been genuinely in love, and he was loved. The life was congenial. Profits were satisfactory. He confessed himself happier than he had ever been before in his life. About a year after his marriage, he found himself among the Arivaca Apaches, who received him well. From his wife and from other sources, he had heard that the Arivacas possessed a deposit of gold from which they had been known to barter rich specimens. The elusive deposit, guarded with fierce secrecy by the Arivaca Apaches, held a tantalizing allure for Yuma. Relying on his reputation as a good Indian, a reputation he had rightfully earned, he approached the friendly chief with a proposition. Displaying a fine rifle, a beaded belt brimming with ammunition, and some curious silver spangles, Yuma offered them in exchange for a glimpse of the coveted spot. The chief, torn between his duty to protect the traditional secret of the gold and the privileges entitled to Yuma as a member of an allied tribe, engaged in a lengthy debate. The allure of the offerings, the fine rifle, the beautiful belt, and the gaudy spangles eventually swayed the chief's decision, and he agreed to reveal the location the following morning. At daybreak, accompanied only by Yuma, the chief led the way on foot, as if on a deer hunt. Their journey took them northward, ascending a long ridge and traversing a rugged country for several miles, until they reached a low, rugged range of mountains overlooking the San Pedro Valley to the east. As they continued their trek, navigating the uneven terrain, the chief halted beside an inconspicuous crater-like depression. "Here," he declared, gesturing towards the horizon. Excitedly, Yuma began to dig with his hunting knife and hands, unearthing ore just a few inches below the surface. Though the ore was compact and difficult to break, the sight of the marvelous vein filled him with an overwhelming sense of joy. The rose quartz, rich with gold, sparkled in the morning light, its beauty a testament to the treasure hidden within the rugged landscape. After securing the precious sample, Yuma, with the chief's assistance, carefully concealed the hole and smoothed over the ground. Before departing, he meticulously surveyed the surroundings, noting the rugged and rocky terrain that would deter any unsuspecting wanderer from stumbling upon the hidden treasure. The lay of the land, as he observed, safeguarded the ore from the forces of nature, ensuring its preservation atop what experts would call a chimney. Though Yuma possessed no mining expertise, the positioning of the ore hinted at vast potential. A chimney housing such rich ore, as demonstrated by the samples Yuma possessed, could yield a fortune of $1 million in gold with minimal expense and in a remarkably short span of time. On the journey back to camp, Yuma and the chief hunted and killed a deer, disguising their true purpose for the extended stay among the Apaches. Yuma bided his time, waiting for the opportune moment to depart for Tucson, where he intended to meet a prospective partner. His companion, a young freighter named Crittenden, hailed from Kentucky, bearing the esteemed lineage of the illustrious statesman John J. Crittenden. Maintaining utmost secrecy regarding the discovery, Yuma and Crittenden made preparations to explore the mine without delay. It was agreed that Yuma's young Indian wife would stay under the care of Mrs. Crittenden, as the two men set out to unearth the riches concealed within the rugged and untamed landscape. Departing from Tucson in the late afternoon, the two men embarked on a nocturnal ride, pressing on through the night until they reached Camp Grant the following morning. Taking respite until evening, they cautiously headed northward along the San Pedro, careful not to divulge their true destination. After covering approximately 10 miles, Yuma announced that they were in the vicinity of the mine. They dismounted, tethered their horses, and settled in to await the break of day, their rest fragmented by the weight of anticipation. With the first light of dawn, they commenced their ascent of the western range, a grueling endeavor that necessitated leading their horses through the steep and rugged terrain. Hours of arduous climbing eventually brought them to the gulch indicated by the Arivaca chief. Armed with a pick and shovel, they toiled for 2 hours, extracting a mere 30 pounds of the richest ore before concealing their activities, burying their tools, and setting course for Tucson. Instead of retracing their steps through the valley of the San Pedro and the path by Old Fort Grant, they charted a different course, descending the western slope of the mountains and traversing an unmarked basin. Traveling through the night, they arrived in Tucson at daybreak. Without delay, they crushed the ore and expertly panned out the gold. From less than 30 pounds of ore, they amassed a staggering $1,200 worth of gold, a feat that could not escape the attention of the entire town, sending it into a frenzy of excitement. To allow the fervor to subside, Yuma and Crittenden wisely decided to postpone further development. Crittenden continued with his freight business, while Yuma, accompanied by his wife, embarked on a trading expedition among the Papago Indians on the Papago Desert, a journey of great promise and bright prospects, their spirits buoyant with the anticipation of what lay ahead. However, little did they know that this would mark their final journey together. The Papagos, known for their gentleness towards the whites, had a historical connection with the establishment of the mission of San Xavier del Bac, a remarkable testament to mission architecture. However, their disposition towards the Apaches and their allies, the Yuma Indians, was as fierce and unyielding as the desert tigers themselves. The reason behind Yuma's decision to bring his wife among the Papagos remained a mystery, as did her willingness to venture among them. Her presence among the Papagos immediately aroused suspicion, as she was unmistakably recognized as belonging to a hostile tribe. The older Papagos were taken aback, believing the traders to be spies sent by the Apaches to scout for an impending raid. No details of the fate of the young couple ever reached the outside world, leading to the widespread belief in Tucson and beyond that they had been lured into the vastness of the desert and met their demise there. As weeks passed without Yuma's return, Crittenden, his partner, grew increasingly apprehensive. Ultimately, he relinquished hope and prepared to journey alone to the mine in the Arivaca country, intending to legally solidify his claim to the discovery. Following the path he and Yuma had previously traveled, Crittenden rode to Old Camp Grant, openly disclosing his purpose this time. Departing from the camp early one morning, he failed to return as expected. 3 days later, soldiers scouting his trail found his horse entangled and almost starved for water, with his saddle and bridle untouched. Expert trackers scoured the surrounding landscape, tracing Crittenden's footsteps to where he had ascended the mountain on foot. His rifle likely at hand, but he seemingly had no opportunity to use it. It appeared that he had been near the mine when an ambushed Apache's bullet cut short his life. It was evident that the Apaches, vigilant and cunning, had intercepted the signs of their intrusion and patiently awaited the return of the prospectors. Following Crittenden's disappearance, a formidable band of around 100 Papagos, bolstered by a handful of Americans and assisted by certain Mexicans, launched a surprise assault on the unwantedly docile Apaches, resulting in a brutal massacre of men, women, and children. This tragic event, etched in history as the Camp Grant Massacre of 1871, buried the band's secrets in perpetual silence. As for Yuma's mine, it remains undisturbed in the rugged Arivaca hills, its $1 million in gold waiting to be extracted from its chimney formation. The exquisite rose quartz that Yuma had unearthed and concealed still lies hidden beneath the loose shale of the mountain's slope. Though no longer guarded by the tigers of the desert, it is now shielded by something even more formidable and relentless, the unforgiving desert itself.
In the heart of the Kofa Wildlife Refuge lies a hidden treasure trove that many have yet to discover. Though garnets may not be as precious as diamonds, they hold a certain allure for the treasure hunters. Imagine filling a simple tin cup with these crimson gems in just a short while, and when the novelty fades, a mere 10-minute drive can take you to the rugged mountain slopes where geodes cluster in the earth like hidden gems. Calcite crystals, schlielite, and hematite, all aglow with fluorescence, are just a few of the wonders to be found. Abandoned gold mines and the ruins of ghost towns, remnants of a bygone era, dot the landscape. This is a paradise for collectors and adventurers alike, waiting to be discovered. As the travelers ventured deeper into the Kofa Wildlife Refuge, they stumbled upon a small stone cabin that was a combination service station and cafe. It was owned by Billy and Leo, two locals who had lived in the area for many years. They welcomed the adventurers with open arms and were happy to chat about the history of the land. After enjoying a cup of coffee and a sandwich, the travelers were eager to continue their journey and explore the hidden treasures that lay ahead. The desert road leading to the hunting area could be found just 75 feet north of the cabin, marked by a sign reading, "Rob Roy Mine." The road was easy to traverse, and the travelers could even bring a trailer for their camping headquarters. As they journeyed deeper into the desert, the travelers were awed by the spectacular views of rocky hills and wide flats. After traveling 14 miles, they came upon a large barrel where the road forked. Directions to various mines were posted on it, and the travelers took the left turn for about 11 miles until they reached another fork. The North Fork led to the old North Star mine, while the East Fork continued past the Baker mine and curved around a mountain at the King of Arizona mine. The journey was treacherous, but the allure of the hidden treasures and the thrill of adventure kept the travelers going. As the travelers ventured deeper into the Kofa Wildlife Refuge, they stumbled upon caretakers of the Rob Roy and Baker mines. Whitey Phillips, an old prospector, also resided nearby and knew the area like the back of his hand. These locals were the key to unlocking the secrets of the refuge, providing insight into the best campsites and watering holes for wild deer. However, they warned the travelers not to camp too close to the tanks, as they were vital for the survival of the animals. The Kofas spanned a vast 200 square miles and were composed of extrusive, igneous rocks atop an ancient and eroded surface. The foothills housed even older rocks, exposed in the northern and southern parts of the range. In 1914, Edward L. Jones, Jr. visited the mountains, publishing A Reconnaissance in the Kofa Mountains, Arizona, the following year. Although scarce nowadays, the booklet remained the most accurate description of the mountain's geological structure. Jones observed that the range's volcanic rocks were likely of Tertiary and Quaternary age, while the older rocks were metamorphosed sediments with associated pegmatites, thought to be of Precambrian age, intruded by granite and dike rocks of probable Mesozoic age. As Jones continued his geological description, he spoke of the narrow dikes of monzonite porphyry that traversed the metamorphosed sediments and pegmatites. The granite was composed of quartz, feldspar, and hornblende, with orthoclase and perthitic intergrowths of orthoclase and albite. Hornblende was present, though not abundant, and commonly altered to epidote and chlorite. After setting up camp, prospectors could begin collecting garnets, which were plentiful in the area. These precious stones could be found at all depths in the sandy earth, ranging in size from peas to large marbles. Gem-quality garnets were often found embedded in pieces of green schist on the low desert between the Rob Roy mine and Green Schist Mountain. Most rock hunters focused on the sandy flats where perfectly formed garnets could easily be found. As the sun set over the Kofa Wildlife Refuge, Jones shared a secret with his fellow rock hunters. If you seek a treasure beyond garnets, venture to the south slope of the towering North Star Mountain, he whispered. Geodes, large and small, lay hidden amidst the rocky terrain, but be warned, some are buried deep and require a skilled hand to unearth. He cautioned them against mistaking the solid white rocks for thunder eggs or geodes. Those were once used to grind ore in mills and are nearly indestructible, he explained. Those who possess them as souvenirs unknowingly hold a piece of history. In the Kofa Wildlife Refuge, the mountain slope is treacherous and perilous, with perpendicular drop-offs of several hundred feet. One should never venture up there without proper guidance. To reach the unpicked section of the mountain safely, follow the gully which appears as a white granite streak running far up the mountain, visible from the cabin at the North Star. The climbing is not too difficult if the gully is followed, but one must always return to it for the route up or down the mountain. Abandoned horizontal mine shafts scatter the landscape, filled with mineralized rocks that produce beautiful fluorescent displays. Scheelite, a bright purple rock, is found everywhere in the area and is highly prized. However, one collector learned the hard way that not everything that glows under ultraviolet light is a mineral specimen, as he encountered a very live and angry scorpion. As Slim Giroux of Lyon, Colorado recounted his experience with the fluorescent glow of a scorpion, the other rock collectors listened in horror. It was a well-known fact that not everything that glowed under ultraviolet light was a mineral specimen, but encountering a scorpion was a terrifying thought. Despite the dangers, the Kofa Wildlife Refuge was a treasure trove of collectible rocks, and those brave enough to venture into the area were rewarded with stunning fluorescent displays. But most visitors to the area were more interested in gold, and the Kofas had long been known as a gold area. Those who dared to explore the mines and mountains were treated to a rich history, from the King of Arizona mine to the Rob Roy with its long horizontal shafts. But the true treasures of the Kofas were the memories and treasure finds that collectors would prize forever. Buried Kentucky treasure. In the enchanting land of northeast Daviess County, Kentucky, a tale of hidden fortunes and lost legacies unfolds. Amos Dadisman, a venerable resident of the region, lived a life tinged with mystery and a touch of magic. As a farmer and a preacher, his days were filled with toil and devotion. But fear of bank failures has caused many people to use the earth as their personal depository. Legend has it that after losing a considerable sum of money to a devastating bank collapse, Amos vowed never to trust financial institutions again. With a heart burdened by mistrust, he concealing his wealth within the nooks and crannies of his humble abode or burying it deep beneath the soil, he safeguarded his treasures from the whims of fate. In April of 1910, the veil of mortality descended upon Amos Dadisman, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a hidden bounty waiting to be discovered. His beloved wife had preceded him in death just a month prior, leaving him with a heavy heart and a secret untold. His daughter, residing in the enchanting city of Evansville, Indiana, and his sister, who dwelled in the mystical Mount Zion, were unaware of the whereabouts of his buried wealth. Rumors swirled amidst the whispers of the townsfolk, hinting at the existence of Amos Dadisman's concealed fortune. Though not a single penny had been unearthed, the allure of a forgotten treasure beckoned to those with a keen eye and a modern treasure hunter's tool, a trusty metal detector. Amidst the rolling hills and verdant pastures of Daviess County, a yearning for adventure and the prospect of unearthing Amos Dadisman's elusive wealth captivated the imaginations of the curious. Who knew what wonders lay hidden beneath the soil, waiting to be discovered by those bold enough to seek them? In a world where magic and mystery intertwine, the legacy of Amos Dadisman lives on, as does the tantalizing promise of a forgotten fortune awaiting its rightful heir. With every beep of the metal detector, the echoes of a bygone era resonate, calling forth intrepid souls to embark on a quest for untold riches and the unraveling of a captivating tale lost to time. Buried treasure at Arivaca. Hidden deep within the ancient Spanish town of Arivaca, nestled amidst the lands of southern Pima County, Arizona, lies a magnificent cache of gold and silver extracted from the bountiful mines that adorned the area. In the early days of Arizona's rich history, when the land was under the dominion of Spain, a humble community by the name of Arivaca was birthed by devoted missionaries. Let us delve into its early chronicles, where the padres toiled within the mines surrounding Arivaca, stockpiling their precious metals within the hallowed grounds of the historic village. Throughout its Spanish era, this humble adobe settlement faced countless trials, besieged by relentless Indian conflicts. The Apache tribes launched countless raids upon the village, causing great strife. And it was during one such relentless assault that the padres, aided by their loyal slaves, secreted a copious amount of gold ingots and silver bullion within the recesses of an ancient adobe dwelling. The ferocity of this particular Apache onslaught surpassed all previous encounters, driving the surviving inhabitants into the refuge of Mexico. The surviving padres, fearing for their lives, retreated to the sanctuary of Mexico City, never returning to reclaim their hidden treasure amidst the ruins of the adobe structures. Undoubtedly, this treasure still slumbers within its enigmatic sanctuary. Arivaca rests northwest of Nogales, nestled on the fringes of the Coronado National Forest, a mere stone's throw away from the illustrious Treasure Rockhound Ranch. Tom Penfield, esteemed treasure seeker, reveals yet another fabled treasure worth a staggering $5 million, awaiting discovery in the vicinity. For further elucidation, consult A Guide to Treasure in Arizona, published by Carter Latham Publications. Thus, the intrepid treasure hunters are bestowed with 2 lost riches to pursue within Arivaca, not forgetting the mines that the padres diligently worked to amass their priceless golden bounty. Surely these mines lie in close proximity, beckoning to be discovered. Crockett's gold. Once upon a time, the tale of Archie Crockett's gold led us to the enchanting county of Obion, nestled in the heart of Tennessee. In those days, Crockett and his family resided in a grand abode situated north of Troy on the old Hickman Highway, about 300 feet south, Troy Community Center. Crockett had amassed a vast fortune from his cotton gin, which was located nearby in Troy. His family was esteemed throughout the region, and he had converted most of his earnings from the gin into the most precious of metals, gold coins. These coins were his buried treasure, and it was a common sight for his wife to observe Archie slipping out in the dead of night with a jar or 2 of gold coins. He was never away for more than 10 minutes, and she frequently pestered him about the treasure's whereabouts, but he never divulged the secret. Like many Tennesseans, Crockett held a great passion for horses and loved nothing more than galloping at breakneck speed across his neighboring pasture. However, on August 2nd, 1901, disaster struck. He was riding at full tilt when his mount stumbled, leaving Crockett with grave injuries. He was carried back to the house, where it was discovered he could neither speak nor move. Sensing the fragility of his future, his wife implored him to reveal the treasure's hiding place. Crockett's only response was to shift his gaze towards the horse pasture, which lay some 350 feet west of the house. Later that fateful night, Crockett took his secret with him as he passed away. The pasture still remains in use and is owned by the esteemed Mr. J.F. Moss. The region is free of the clutter of junk metal, and there are no high weeds to make searching difficult. Therefore, one could pay a visit to Moss and strike a deal for a search. Who knows, if one were to come across Crockett's gold, it could prove to be an extremely profitable venture indeed.
Don't scoff, amigo. I reckon most of these stories hold true, even if they've been passed down through countless years. I am a firm believer in the power of treasure stories, for I have experienced something akin to their enchantment myself. For over a year, I roamed the treacherous expanse of the Sonoran Desert in Arizona, tirelessly sifting through sand and gravel, unearthing a few precious nuggets across 3 mountain ranges, and stumbling upon a small pocket of gold near the Mexican border. Yet, the elusive mother lode, the grand vein that all prospectors yearn for, remained just beyond my grasp. It was around the twilight of December 15th when my boots carried me up the rugged walls of Palm Canyon, nestled deep within the Cofa Mountains, somewhere betwixt the arid stretch of Arizona Highway 95 connecting Yuma and Quartzsite. In this secluded sanctuary, adorned with the only native palms in all of Arizona, I sought my fortune. But alas, a fine mist of powdery snow began to descend, delicately veiling the rocky precipices with an ephemeral sheen. Though the snowflakes swiftly melted upon contact, they transformed the cliffs into treacherous slopes, slick and perilous. Realizing the danger that lurked above, I made a reluctant decision to retreat, vowing to return when fortune smiled upon me. Leaving the canyon behind, my weary footsteps guided me along a wide wash, a dry riverbed strewn with a cascade of debris. This wash, born in the lofty heights of the mountains, meandered its way across the vast expanse of the desert flats, like a serpentine guardian of hidden wonders. Half an hour into the wash, I caught sight of glimmering pebbles drawing me closer. Kneeling down, I marveled at the marble-sized stones adorned with delicate gold nuggets. Sensing their value, I carefully pocketed a handful, my eyes darting across the peaks, committing their distinct formations to memory. These landmarks would guide me back to this treasure trove someday. To quell any doubts, I ventured into Quartzsite, seeking affirmation of my find. Entering the shop of a seasoned dealer in gems, minerals, and gold, I approached him with innocence, presenting the precious pebbles. As he held them up to the light, a spark of excitement ignited in his eyes. With a jeweler's glass, he scrutinized them silently, delving deeper into their secrets. One moment, he finally spoke, his voice filled with intrigue. "I must take a closer look." He retreated into the sanctuary of another room, closing the door behind him, leaving me to ponder the mysteries of my newfound fortune. Emerging with a renewed curiosity, he inquired, his voice laced with a hint of wonder, "Pray tell, good sir, where did you stumble upon these rare treasures?" In search of an answer, I resorted to a little trick I learned from Nick the Russian, a seasoned prospector I held in high regard. Whenever someone posed the question of the source of his gold, Nick would employ a simple yet effective gesture. Mimicking his technique, I extended my arm and pointed my finger, performing a smooth arc of 180 degrees. With a knowing smile, I uttered, "Out there." The man from Quartzsite grinned knowingly. "I should have known better than to inquire," he admitted. "What you've got here is a hefty amount of gold in these minuscule rocks. If you trace it back, it might just lead you to a lucrative vein. This is the most promising discovery Quartzsite has witnessed in ages." With that in mind, I decided to enlist the help of my trusted partner, Whitey Phillips. We had embarked on numerous ventures together, and his intimate knowledge of the region made him the ideal choice. Whitey resided in a cabin nestled in the Cofa Mountains, where he had spent a good 50 years prospecting the land. We trudged through the rugged washes for a full day, scrambling over massive boulders that towered over a man's head. It seemed that every few steps, the washes split into multiple branches, confusing our path. Although I later tried to map out the area in my mind and on paper, I couldn't locate a spot that even remotely resembled where I had discovered gold on the surface of the wash. It was disheartening to realize that not only had I failed to find the exact location, but I also began to doubt if I had ever been close at all. The washes were like a maze, with countless branches that could easily lead one astray. They all looked indistinguishable from one another. After 2 days of searching, all we managed to find was a solitary Gila monster. It was a disappointing outcome, but the memory of that experience still lingers in my mind. I can't help but wonder what could have been if I had followed the wash into the mountains on that snowy December day. Perhaps I would have stumbled upon a rich vein of gold. Or if I had taken the time to gather a few dozen of those unassuming pebbles, I could have made a handsome fortune. The handful of stones I did manage to collect fetched a staggering $250 each from a collector, reminding me of the missed opportunity that slipped through my fingers. Why did I not choose either path? I cannot offer a satisfactory answer, other than the fact that I embarked on my journey that morning, with no provisions or tools for prospecting. It was merely a leisurely hike, devoid of any serious intent. Now I have come to the conclusion that the gold site will only be rediscovered under specific weather conditions, mirroring those present when I initially stumbled upon it. Specifically, a gentle mist descending upon the wash in the late afternoon of mid-December, beneath the weighty embrace of an overcast sky. The sun, piercing through the dense cover, cast a subdued glow rather than the usual harsh brilliance of the desert's fiery orb. It was this soft illumination that caused the stones to shimmer and beckon to me. Undoubtedly, the mist veiling the precious stones played its part in enhancing this enchanting spectacle. If you stumble upon the same revelation as I did, make sure to erect markers, guiding you back to that sacred ground. Gather those stones laced with golden threads and venture deep into the rugged peaks. Within those towering summits lies the genesis of gold, a vein concealed amidst the untamed wilderness, gold forever sought by the hearts of men, a treasure both discovered and forgotten with equal ease. Those who mock such tales fail to grasp the essence of this precious metal. It is the very elusiveness of gold that renders it invaluable, a quality that sets it apart and which renders it a prized enigma of the ages. Wounded and screaming, the pack animals thundered in all directions. Their hooves trampled over the fallen while the chaos raged. Unseen amidst the turmoil, a young lad crept through the grass, hiding near the south side of the ambush site. Slowly inching his way along, he finally reached a bend in the trail. Leaping to his feet, he sprinted for the border, the sole survivor of the pack train's slaughter. The other riders were mercilessly cut down by the hidden assailants. The gunfire dwindled to sporadic shots as the wounded were dispatched. Some gang members swiftly set to unloading the heavy packs from the mules, while others rode off in pursuit of the escaped animals. The laden beasts were discovered grazing peacefully in the long grass of the San Simon Valley. Near the canyon's mouth lay the young leader, a dark bloodstain squarely between his shoulders. The slain Mexicans were left where they had fallen, their bleached bones remaining to give Skeleton Canyon its grim name. After herding the mules to Cave Creek, the packs were emptied, and $75,000 was divided among the gang. In the weeks that followed, the money flowed freely in the saloons of Charleston and Galeyville. A month hence, Jim Hughes galloped his frothing horse into Galeyville's bustling Main Street. Fresh from Sonora, where he had skillfully gleaned intelligence on the forthcoming activities of smuggler trains, Hughes, a half-breed with a penchant for befriending Mexicans, effortlessly extracted valuable information. He uncovered news of a heavily laden train set to depart for Tucson from Sonora. In a local saloon, Hughes encountered Ike, Billy Clanton, and Milt Hicks. They disclosed that Curly Bill was carousing in Charleston and would likely be absent for days. "This cannot wait," declared Hughes. "Another pack outfit is due tomorrow. We must seize it without Curly. Naturally, we'll ensure he receives a full share to keep him content." The group recruited for the second ambush included Hughes, the two Clantons, Hicks, Jack McKenzie, Zwing Hunt, and Billy Grounds. Unseen rifles halted the pack train a mere half-mile from the previous ambush, causing 3 Mexican riders to tumble from their mounts. The remaining vaqueros hastily retreated to the safety of the border. Amid the chaos, a chance shot struck Jim Hughes in the shoulder, felling him. The panicked mules fled the canyon, spilling their contents across the valley. Laden with silver coins on one side and an equal weight of gold bars on the other, the loot surpassed the bandits' expectations. The silver coins were estimated at $90,000, while the gold bars were projected to fetch $39,000. Recognizing the impracticality of transporting the treasure on their steeds, the gang resolved to conceal it in the canyon, intending to retrieve it later with a team and wagon. They buried the loot near the canyon's mouth, beneath 3 oak trees, concealing their ill-gotten gains. Jim Hughes's injury turned out to be minor, and after a few days, he and some companions returned to the location, accompanied by a hired Mexican driver with a team and wagon. The treasure was loaded into the wagon and transported to Davis Mountain. There, it was reburied in a pit rumored to have already held much loot previously acquired by Billy Grounds and Zwing Hunt during a previous foray into Mexico. In exchange for his services, the Mexican teamster received a fatal gunshot to the head. For years, the fate of the loot from Skeleton Canyon has been a subject of speculation. Many believe it still lies buried beneath the Three Oaks. What is certain is that the remains of 19 men and numerous mules were left to decay under the Arizona sun. It is widely known that cowboys working on San Simon ranches have discovered old silver coins scattered across the valley. Bill Sanders, a rancher, reported that his brother-in-law, Henry Smith, unearthed 2 of these coins near the old Ross Sloan Ranch. There are those who are convinced that the canyon is haunted. Cowboys have recounted witnessing enigmatic lights at the ambush spot. Others allege hearing cries and screams emanating from the area. It is also asserted that misty, luminous figures have been spotted at night near Devil's Kitchen. Is the treasure still concealed in the shadowy glen of Skeleton Canyon? Are the reported phenomena the echoes of souls who still protect the gold that cost them their lives? Or could such apparitions be more rationally explained, such as the cries of wildcats or marsh gas that forms in the swampy region adjacent to the grove? A short time after the second pack train was ambushed, Zwing Hunt and Billy Grounds were involved in the famous Stockton Ranch fight, in which Grounds was killed and Hunt was seriously wounded. Later, Hugh Hunt reported that Zwing Hunt had been killed by Indians. His body was identified by Billy Breckenridge, deputy sheriff under John Behan, and also by others who had known him. Zwing Hunt was buried under a juniper tree in a lonely Arizona canyon. His name is cut in the bark of the tree. With the deaths of Grounds and Hunt, the story of the treasure of Skeleton Canyon becomes even more mysterious and involved. Soon after the supposed death of Zwing Hunt, his uncle reported having seen him in San Antonio, Texas. The uncle claimed that Hunt had survived his wounds and had journeyed to his uncle's ranch. According to the report, Zwing lived but a short time after his arrival at the ranch, dying there of the old injury. Before he died, Zwing Hunt was reported to have related a story that was soon to become legend. According to the uncle, Hunt had told him that he and Grounds had raided the town of Matamoros in Mexico. They had taken much loot, including a box of diamonds and 2 solid gold statues stolen from the cathedral. After crossing the Rio Grande, Hunt said, some of the loot was disposed of and the rest cached in the Davis Mountain treasure pit. Hunt's uncle later produced a map, which he claimed his nephew had drawn just before his death. The uncle also claimed to have been given verbal instructions by the dying outlaw as to the whereabouts of the buried treasures. We played cards in a cave at Davis Mountain, Hunt was reported to have said. From there, we could see into New Mexico. Detailed on the map were relative locations of all points needed in tracing the treasure pit. These points included the burned wagon, certain trails and a rock on which 2 crosses were carved, as well as the treasure site itself. Armed with this map, the old man felt that he would have no trouble in finding the buried loot. He had all the details except one. Hunt had failed to tell him the way to Davis Mountain. The name and location of the mountain were strange even to lifelong residents of Arizona. The map eventually passed into the hands of Virgil Boucher, who actually was Bill Grounds' brother. Boucher hunted more than 30 years for the elusive wealth, making many expeditions into the Arizona mountains. He searched from Skeleton Canyon to the Peloncillos and from the Chiricahuas to the Guadalupes. His faith in Hunt's map was unshaken, even after every effort to locate the money proved fruitless. Virgil Boucher died around 1924, still believing in the mysterious legend of outlaw gold. Bill Sanders, an early pioneer in the Turkey Creek area, searched many years for the buried loot, but failed to locate a trace of it. Sanders' son, Will, still receives letters of inquiry from professional treasure hunters concerning his father's findings in the search. In general, the whole story is viewed with skepticism by most Arizonans. In his book, Tombstone, Walter Noble Burns tells of an old man who lived in paradise that claimed to have been acquainted with the men who committed the actual crime. This man stated that only 6 men were involved, and that Hunt and Grounds were not among them. He also claimed that one of the bandits told him that only $4,000 was taken at Skeleton Canyon, and that most of this was in dobe dollars. A few bars of gold were said to have been sold, and the money spent in the bars of Charleston and Tombstone. To this day, the mystery remains. Did Zwing Hunt really die in Arizona, thus leaving the story of the map and the buried treasure a figment of the uncle's imagination? Did he actually survive long enough to draw the map, as sworn by the old man? The one known fact is that the legend still lives on. Every year, the canyons and mountains are searched by treasure hunters. The cache, if it exists, has defied all efforts to find it during the almost 90 years since the massacre at Skeleton Canyon. The search for the treasure continues, an integral part of the allure of treasure hunting. The longing to believe in the existence of the cache persists, and perhaps one day, a fortunate seeker will chance upon a wealth beyond their wildest dreams, the concealed loot from Skeleton Canyon. Perhaps it could be you. The first step in your quest is to locate Davis Mountain. However, the existence and whereabouts of Davis Mountain remain as elusive as the treasure itself. For years, the tale of the Skeleton Canyon massacre has captivated my imagination. As a history enthusiast and amateur prospector, I acknowledge that I could never aspire to discover the grand treasure that dedicated hunters have failed to find after investing years in the pursuit. In the past, I have found satisfaction in unearthing small treasures with little or no monetary value, such as ammo cases, old spurs, and military buttons, all associated with historical events of the country. The thrill of finding these items has always made it worthwhile for me. The time arrived when my wife, Charlotte, and I resolved to try our luck at Skeleton Canyon. The idea of exploring the old murder site for a few days stirred excitement within us. Packed with supplies and metal detectors, we embarked on our journey to Arizona, with Tombstone as our destination. We had spent numerous vacations in this historic town and had forged many meaningful friendships there. Upon our arrival in Tombstone, we encountered Wayne Winters, the editor of the Tombstone Epitaph, Arizona's oldest continuously published newspaper. After sharing our plans with him, Wayne recommended that we get in touch with Jack Hendrickson, a local businessman and former president of the Chamber of Commerce. Jack, an old friend and a trusted source of historical wisdom, has always been our go-to advisor in matters concerning history. Encountering Hendrickson outside his Lucky Cuss establishment, with his parrot Doc, engaged in a lively conversation, was quite the spectacle. Despite his desire to join us in Skeleton Canyon, business commitments held him back. Nonetheless, he kindly provided us with a map of the area. We then sought the company of Everett Brownsley, the former city marshal of Tombstone, and his wife Millie, who graciously agreed to accompany us to the massacre site. Our journey led us through Apache to the old Ross Sloan spread at the mouth of Skeleton Canyon. The eerie remnants of the past, including bleached steer bones and the bawling of grazing cattle, surrounded us. In our quest for relics, we combed the area with metal detectors. Our perseverance paid off when we unearthed an old Mexican coin dating back to 1864, followed by another from 1878. These discoveries felt like a tangible link to the legend of Skeleton Canyon. Near the top of the knoll, Everett's detector fairly screamed. The big marshal was so excited that he almost jumped out of his well-worn boots. Reaching down, he picked up a blackened coin and a rifle cartridge case. "Too bad these things can't talk," he mused. "They sure could tell us some stories." The old case was badly flattened and corroded, but still a worthy addition to my home museum. The Mexican coin was dated 1875. For the next 2 hours, we scoured the creek edge, but to no avail. The sun was setting, so we decided to try one last sweep before returning to town. Just as we were about to give up, Everett's detector buzzed again. 4 inches under the surface was still another coin, dated 1880. The marshal's face lighted up like that of a child with a new toy. His elation was not due to the coin's value, but to its historical significance. With darkness falling, we reluctantly agreed to leave the canyon. As we drove away, the lights of the truck swept over the whitened bones of the dead steer we had sighted earlier in the day. The bones were not those of a Mexican mule, nor of a long-dead smuggler. but their presence served as a reminder of the gruesome event that had occurred here almost 90 years before. We have often wished that we could have spent the night in Skeleton Canyon. Perhaps then we too might have heard the cry of a lion, or have seen dim shapes moving silently in the old grove under Devil's Kitchen. Would these have been only animals? Is it possible that the place is really haunted by the restless spirits of Mexican caravans, still seeking to guard the treasure which cost the lives of so many?